Okay. So I guess it is, like I said, this one's gonna be slide free. There's no slides to hide behind, but let me give everyone kind of a background around what we're going to talk about tonight and sort of what led to this. I think it's probably going back 2 years now that I think about that. Peter did a presentation that was probably one of our best received presentations, where he walked through WordPress, the WordPress admin area in quite a great detail. But I think he specifically was trying to help people understand posts and pages and all that, and just helping people understand how the different parts of WordPress fit together. So we did that a couple of years ago. Like I said, we had some great feedback on that. So we figured it's a good time to revisit that, especially as we have a lot of new people, kind of working with WordPress, especially over this past year. I think people maybe are playing with websites for the first time. So the idea behind today is we're gonna talk through kind of screen, or I should say item by item, the WordPress admin area. And we're probably going to take, I know we split it between the two of us. So each section, 10 minutes-ish or so for each section. Some may be longer, some may be less. But the thought is we're not going to do an exhaustive look into it, but we'll try to help you understand kind of what each section is for, or kind of what each tool is for in the dashboard. Peter, anything to add before we start diving in?
No, just of course. Well, a couple of things. One of the reasons, because not only is it a good time, but Ray is traveling, and we're coming off of the holiday season, so this was good. So some of this is by the seat of our pants, but hopefully you'll roll with it. So we're going to back each other up, right, Ray? In case if I miss something, let me know. And we encourage questions. If we're in an area where we should be spending a little bit more time and folks have questions, let us know. Speak up, chat, raise hands, whatever method you want to use, Ray. But yeah, I always enjoy when there's some back and forth in Q&A. So.
All right. So, and one of the caveats here too is we'll talk about this. And Peter, you and I we'll flip back and forth of sharing. So you have screen sharing access. So we're going to split it up. We're going to take different sections. I'm starting off in the beginning. And so the first thing to talk about here is we're covering the WordPress admin area. And sometimes the terminology is a little confusing too. Like originally, I think I was even saying we're going to discuss a WordPress dashboard, but dashboard's even a specific part of the admin area. So terminology wise, this is the WordPress admin area. And what I'm showing, at least, and I assume you're doing the same, Peter, is I've created a complete clean install of WordPress using, I think I'm using the 2020 theme or 2021 theme, whatever. I'm using the simplest theme out there that I could find. Because one of the first things to talk about is when you look at our screens, or quite often when I'm working with clients or people ask us questions, one of the things to remember is even your admin area is going to look different. It's really going to look different depending on your theme, what plugins you have, hosting. There's a lot of factors in here that can make things look different. So as we're going through this, just keep in mind that what you see may not look exactly like this, but everything that we're talking about at least should apply. Every WordPress install has these things on it. Some things may be turned off, and we'll talk about reasons for that. So the very first, maybe again, from a terminology standpoint, let me move my Zoom window a little bit. Another oddball thing from terminology is this part, the kind of the black bar up here, that's typically referred to as the toolbar in WordPress. That also can look very different depending on your hosting, what plugins you have, etc. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just again, keep this in mind. Like, let me show you. So this is a clean install, but here's another client site that I'm working on. This has an SEO plugin, so that's going to be in here. This has, this one actually doesn't have a lot of other stuff on it because I'm still kind of building it out. But, this top of black bar area is going to look different depending on what kind of plugins that you're using. So I won't spend a lot of time talking about this because this tends to vary quite a bit. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the dashboard itself. So this area of WordPress, this section here is called the dashboard. So a couple things to talk about. Like I said, from a clean install, Depending on who your hosting company is, like I said, this may look different. Like I've worked on sites where if you're using your host's WordPress installation tools, they may load on a bunch of stuff from I forget what's that company. It's not. Is it Monster? I'm thinking like Bluehost.
Yeah, like Opt-in Monster.
Yeah, they'll give you a whole bunch of other things. So this whole dashboard itself will look quite different, at least the welcome part of it, because they want you to install things through their service. But typically on a clean install, this is all you really should get from what's on your dashboard. You'll get a welcome section. In each of these, from a terminology standpoint, these are widgets. So I know that's a little confusing too, because we tend to think of widgets as things that you see on the front end of your site or things that you're coding against. But this whole piece here, each of these really is a widget. And as widgets, they do have some behavior too that you may or may not be aware of. So one thing, for example, is you can drag these things around. You know, you can move them around however you want. You can move widgets. You can collapse these. You know, you can collapse them if for some reason there's one you never want to see. You can also, again, you can drag things and move them from one side to the other. So this whole section here is very customizable. I tend not to do that too much. I mean, just for my own personal installs, because after a while, I like seeing things in a particular spot, whichever site I go to. But that's because I probably, like Peter as well, too, we work on multiple sites. So, you know, having things in a consistent spot helps me. But if it's your site and there's only one site you're working on, feel free to move things around. Even better, things sometimes people are afraid of doing is if there's something in here that's kind of not relevant to you, turn it off. You're not deleting anything. So let me show you how you do that. If you go to screen options, and this screen options section here is also context sensitive. So you'll see when, like Peter is going to show posts and pages, the screen options is going to look different there. Or if you're in appearance, it's going to look different. But on this particular page, the dashboard, one of the things you could do here is say, let's say you don't care about creating quick drafts. Maybe my website is primarily pages and I don't do many posts. So in that case, I would turn that quick draft section off, and now that widget is gone. So you can't see it here, but it entirely has disappeared. So feel free, let's see what this would look like. If I wanted a completely blank, look at that, a completely blank screen, whatever, for whatever reason, I could do that. So that's one thing to consider. Customize this area, customize this, move things around to where it makes sense. Just real quick too, again, there's no magic. I mean, the great thing about WordPress is it's open source. So there's no magic happening here in terms of how something is getting added as a widget. So let me show you one example. Don't do this at home. This is not the preferred way to do this, but just to show you a quick example, and don't worry about what the code really is, but let me uncomment this code. So it really is it's code. It's PHP code, and without even understanding much, it's a function that PHP exposes to say, add a dashboard widget. And in this example, I'm just going to spit out some text. Here is some text. That's about as fancy as my thing gets. Let me drag my Zoom window is kind of blocking me here. Oops, come on, Zoom window. There you go. And update that file. So now if I go back to my dashboard, let me go back to my dashboard. You'll now see this goofy thing. So that's where I think people get confused sometimes as well too, is when you look at this section, there's a lot of other things that could be inserting widgets into this dashboard. Typically, not always, but typically it's your theme or it's a plugin. I'd say most times it's probably a plugin. Let me go back to this other site I'm working on. So this site has Jetpack. So Jetpack sticks something in here. Woocommerce, this one, I don't know if this says Woocommerce. So Woocommerce will stick something in there. I mean, the thought behind it is it makes a lot of sense. If like WooCommerce, for example, you want to see immediately your number of orders, you want to see some information from WooCommerce. You don't want to dig into the WooCommerce screens to see that. So WooCommerce, just like I showed you that piece of code, they've implemented a piece of code to grab some information out of your WooCommerce install and then display it on the dashboard. So sometimes if you see things on here again, just remember that you could always remove things. You could always like uncheck, you know, if I don't want to see that WooCommerce information, I don't want to see, I have Fluent Forms on here too. You can just uncheck it and you don't need to see it. Let me see. One other thing to mention, and this, I'll cover this a bit more in users, is what you see on the dashboard also depends on your security level in your role. So in this example, sorry, my window here, let me sign out for a second. So I'm going to log out as myself, and I've created another ID. Oops, log out. And now I have another ID, which is just a subscriber. So in this case, oops, sorry, subscriber. In this case, oh, I'm on the wrong site. Too many windows open. In this case, the ID that I'm signing in on has a lower level of authorization. It's just a subscriber. It's not a contributor. It's not an admin, et cetera. So if you look at this, you know, I only have these couple of widgets. I don't have a widget in here that lets me create posts or pages. I don't think I have site info, which is kind of interesting. they don't want subscribers knowing about the site info, which I guess makes sense. But curiously, you know, the one I created and added, the sample thing, it's in there. It still displays. And the reason for that is because when I coded that, the little sample code, I didn't put in anything that said, you know, that checks the user's role or security. So I'm just basically creating this widget for everybody. So that's just another consideration too. Like I said, that, you know, things may come in, things may look different depending on your user role. Things may look different depending on your theme. And let me just show you one more in here. So let me sign back out as myself. This is my normal one. Let me just show you another silly example. Oh, I turned off. I'm like, where did everything go? That's because I turned everything off. And just one that's slightly different, but it's really the same concept. Again, think of this as stuff that you can code against in WordPress. One that everyone has probably seen, and you probably turned it off because it's ridiculous, but it's an interesting example, is Hello Dolly. Hello. So the Hello Dolly plugin, which used to come installed by default, I don't know if they do that anymore, but you know, if you look at what this thing really does, it's truly ridiculous. It's up here. It has a scrolling list of the lyrics of Hello Dolly, the song. So if you keep refreshing it, it's just going to keep changing. But all that is that's a widget. And I think this one was actually created by Matt Mullenweg from WordPress. And the whole purpose of, I mean, the only value I see of it is it actually provides you an example of how to create a plugin. So if you're interested, you can go into this plugin and look how the code, how it was coded. But this just shows an example of he's calling something, or that code is calling something on this screen, and it's just overlaying something in here. So none of this stuff shows up on the front end of your site. It's all just kind of on the back end for the admin. I think that's, Peter, I think that's what I had for
let's
dashboard.
See.
The updates portion, I probably, let me just show you that real quick. I don't think anyone has any questions on this. I assume for the updates, we've all done updates, but let me show you this site, which actually has some updates on it. Again, updates may or may not display. You know, if you don't have anything to update, you won't see anything in there. Typically, WordPress is pretty good about giving you a number of updates. We talked, I think, last month about now WordPress itself has the ability to turn auto turn on updates. So if those are automatically updating, you won't see this number with the number of things to be updated. But it's a quick visual cue to tell you here's some things that need to be updated. Yeah, not much else to say on the dashboard. Any questions that folks have on this that idea of the widgets, or this first part of our tour? This is the beginning of our tour of the admin area. Feel free to take yourself off mute if you have questions, or Peter's about to get started. Feel free to shoot me any questions.
You know, you'll cover this under users. You were just there, but other ways you could see a different whole interface. And I think kind of we'll keep coming back to this idea of saying add it, this is a base install, but you know, when you add plugins, whatever, you also have control of some of the, under your user profile, some of the things that the way this whole thing works, the dashboard works. One of the simplest things that actually could be handy if you're dealing with multiple sites is colors. So you can set kind of color choices under your user profile, so that while we're looking at, you know, blacks and grays and blues, you can look at purples and greens and all. And I use that sometimes to remind me what site I'm on. So it's kind of a
that's a great one. Yeah, I didn't show that, but that's also like for the toolbar too, that if you're working on, let's say, a dev site versus a live site, and again, not everyone may necessarily be doing that, but you know, if you have a staging site, for example, you're right, putting some different colors there. One quick thing I forgot to mention, but again, I think we'll see this in every page, is just like screen options is contextual, so is help.
yeah, good.
So, yeah, so you click on the help thing, it's really nice too. I mean, it'll give you a quick, you know, here's what this part of the admin screen is. You know, it gives you, I won't read through it, you can read it on your own. But it also has a contextual link to the documentation specifically to this dashboard. And later screens, when you pull down your help, it'll be to, you know, those other screens as well.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I didn't miss that piece. All right, let me get my window out of the way. Boy. So I'm so used to having my big monitor.
I know, I could tell that that's another dashboard. So mine will, yeah, mine's be widescreen. So my dashboard has 3 columns.
Yeah.
You probably do that when you're at home. You have 3 columns on your dashboard, and now you have 2.
Yeah.
Because you're on the smaller screen. So that's yet another reason why people would be seeing something a little bit different.
True.
Let me do this. Let's see. No, I want to do that one, right? Do you see a screen?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So yeah. Oh, I have 4 wide. So let's see. This is my, and you can see the 4 wide screen there. Okay. Ray's probably very small on your screen, but you know, yeah. And I'm really glad you covered in, you know, the screen options and the help, because I think these are underutilized. They're stuck up in the corner, and you have a lot. The help is they've gotten actually really quite good with being contextual, you know, based on where you are and what they're showing. So I'm going to talk about posts, and yes, I do have the 2021 theme loaded. I did load some sample data. This is all kind of nonsensical, but so that we can kind of look to see when you start building your site. Now, WordPress was originally, you know, launched as a blogging tool, still is for probably most people. You know, it's evolved into content management and offering all kinds of, you know, services, but the blogging is sort of the core of WordPress, and this area under posts is where all the blog management takes place as far as the blog content. So starting at the top, you got posts, and then all posts that's basically the same link if you're looking in your menu choices on your left. So when you go to your posts, you're going to see a list of your posts. Under your screen options on this page, you have the ability to manage and modify what you're seeing on this screen. So say you're not interested in seeing anything about comments and tags, you can turn those off. Leave them on. It gives you some information about what you've actually done on your site and all. But you've got that control. One of the things that I tend to use is, you know, for the larger sites, you know, I might change the number of pages that I show on a page, so that when you come down here and you've got there's 29 on this, but if I had set this my options here to say 20, the default, and apply that, I now have 2 pages because it's showing me 20, and I've got 29 of them. So now the second page. So it's a way of being able to show more on your screen if you're looking for something. So I'm gonna I'll move that up, say to 50. That might be over too much in some cases, but you have that kind of control. The other thing you have here is the extended view versus the compact view. I tend to stay in compact view and never think about it, but under your extended view, if you turn that on and apply it, what that'll do is that'll give you an idea of what's in that post, which obviously, kind of makes this list a lot longer. There are certainly ways of modifying through plugins and code, and we don't, if there's time at the end, we can even talk about how to do that. But how to manage what you're seeing on this screen list. Maybe you want to put your featured image or some other thing that you've got, or some plugins will actually automatically add certain bits of content for you. So again, very customizable that way. The next thing as we move down, avoiding the add new, is how you're looking at this list, and there are a number of ways that you can filter what you're looking at. In this demo, I've created kind of different user accounts, and say I just wanted to look at what I published. If I click mine, it's gonna automatically filter mine. If I want to see all, back to all. Published is just that. Say you're working on drafts versus published. I happen to have, if I click on draft now, and it's telling me how many I have. I have one draft here. I have something in the trash, which I can say delete permanently. It's the hello world that comes with the install. I just happened to delete it, and here it is in the trash. And this is the way that you can go into your trash and recover what might be there, and you can restore it or delete it permanently if hey, I just get it out of everything. Is a way to do that. So that's a way of filtering. You can also filter by and search, but you could filter by dates. It's the date of it's the published date. So say you're saying, oh, what did I do back in October? If I filter that, now I'm only seeing things that were, say, posted, published last October. So it's a way of kind of going through everything. You can do the same thing with category. These are again just kind of nonsensical categories, but you can, if you have a particular category that you want to kind of look at, well, what have I talked about and all, this is a great way that you can go in and just kind of filter by your categories, which makes things really nice. Or if you, and I don't know, I have to find a word, but if you can also velvet. Say you talked about something, you can search all of your posts, and because this is dummy text that I use a lot, that's in a lot of things. And one of the things to keep in mind too, I don't know, this can sometimes, these filters can work together. So right now I'm searching velvet under this particular category versus now this I'm seeing actually quite a bit more. But it's a neat way that you can find things using the search or the filters. Now, once you're looking at the list, so you find something, when you hover over, you have choices. You have the choices of edit, quick edit, trash review. Edit goes right into the edit screen. If you click on the title, it'll do the same thing. So that'll just open up my editing screen. Quick edit opens up not the content, but some of the meta things around it. Your categories, your tags, basically everything but the main content for the most part. So what author, if you need to change who the author is, if you want to change, and you could do this actually in the post. I'll get into that in just a minute. But the quick edit allows you to get access to some of these top level parts of that post. Trash would obviously put it in the trash. You can, and then looking at both quick edit and trash, those are things you can do under bulk actions. So say you had all of the or you wanted to take Elwin, I don't know, these three, you could highlight posts, click on the little checkbox. Of course, if you check here, it's going to highlight all of them or check all of them. But say you want to do something with these three, you could go in and you could move them to trash and apply, and it would delete those three. Or you can go to edit and apply, and when you do that, it's giving you the things that you can kind of edit. It's sort of the quick edit for those three check choices, and that gives you an option to go in there and maybe you want to say, oh, I want to move those all to a certain category or move them to a certain author. I don't want to do them one at a time. You know, you can do this using the quick edit screen. So what, you know, this idea of being able to select a few posts that you have and then do an edit, and then when you apply that, it'll say, okay, here are the things that you can edit. That once you then hit, you know, the update button, it will apply those things to those posts that you have selected. So that's kind of a neat way that you can manage a number of things at the same time. Hitting cancel does just that. It cancels that, closes the box. I can select and unselect, like a lot of things, you know, by turning that on and off. You can sort by the title, ascending or descending, and you can sort by the date, ascending and descending. You can't sort by author, categories, or tags with WordPress kind of out of the box, but you can with certain plugins, and you can add other columns that might be searchable with other plugins, but the base gives you this functionality. Once you get into a post, and of course we can spend the whole 2 hours on this area, but we'll just talk about some of the things in terms of the interface that we're looking at. First of all, for those who are kind of aware of the whole moving from blocks, and I'll show you under classic. Say I looked at this same post under the classic. Do I have that same one? Let me do this. I'm going back to edit the same post. WordPress changed, Ray, do you remember? I can't even remember now, a year ago, a year and a half ago, no, whatever.
2018, I think. Well,
yeah, changed to where the block editor, it was 5.5. So the block editor is the default, but a lot of people decided they wanted to stick with the classic editor. And that's okay. And you can still stick with the classic editor using the classic editor plugin, but your interface to your posts are different. This is the same exact post, but one in using the block editor, and this is what we're used to seeing if we use the classic editor. And then for those who, without getting too much into the block editor, if I click on this block, which is the classic editor block, I can convert it all, and now these are all separate blocks, in case anybody's kind of stuck with that and say, oh, my posts all have they're all in one block called the classic block, and you can just convert it to separate blocks. But in this interface, what we have, and I'll try to compare, but without going too much into, you know, what the differences are. But the block editor has moved some things around. So for example, what we're used to seeing up in screen options, where you can turn on whether you want to look at some of these things. Same idea with the other screens. Show me that widget or don't show me that widget. In the block editor, it's in a different place. So what we have here is on the top right, the three buttons here. That gives you a lot of control over your editor interface, your post editor interface. And by the way, this is very similar to Pages, and we'll briefly look at Pages, but a lot of it, you have actually more functionality in posts because of things like categories and tags and things. But when you click on this the three buttons here, your right bar is going to show you the options that you have, and all of these things could be kind of turned on and off, and you can use those. So, you know, the top toolbar, when you show that's something that when you have a block and you're editing the block, whether you're seeing you're editing things up here at the top, or if I go here and turn that off, now my editing is happening at the block level. So that's one place where you have a little bit more control. I like it here. I think a lot of people do. Keep in mind, when you go to YouTube and you look up a tutorial and you see, and they're doing things a little bit differently, it might be as simple as, you know, they've got the top toolbar turned on or off. Spotlight mode is kind of interesting, where It's just very simple. The block you're looking at is darker than the ones around it. Not anything that I kind of concern myself with. Full screen mode is just that. You're losing for people who just want to focus only on the editing, and you can even hide this settings bar here by doing that and go total full screen. And that just removes that left bar and the top bar, and just allows you to focus on your content. The visual editor and the code editor is a lot like what we had in the classic editor, where you had visual and text. So it's pretty much the same thing, but in the block editor, under preferences, that's where you find where the code editor is. Say you have to go in there and you have to put in some specific HTML, and here's where you can also see basically the difference in how blocks write content out when you're looking at the code editor. Let's see, under tools, block manager, this sets which blocks you're actually looking at when you're going to add blocks. So say there's a whole bunch of things that maybe you're muddling through and go, I never use those blocks. You can actually turn those off in the block editor, again under options and block editor. Manage all reusable blocks is a place where you can go. It'll open up another window. I don't think we're going to go there, but you can save blocks as reusable blocks, and you can go from here to go manage those on a separate page. Keyboard shortcuts is kind of interesting in that it just shows you the keyboard shortcuts that you have the options of, in case you didn't know that you had keyboard shortcuts. People might be used to the Control S, for example, for saving, or undo your last change. Control Z is nice and handy. The copy and paste, those are all here. Your list of keyboard shortcuts. It's just a place where you can find those. Welcome guide. All that is if you first do an install, you'll see this. This is the place if you say, oh, I'd like to see that again. Not a big deal. Copy all content is just what it says. It's going to copy all content. What's kind of interesting here is instead of having contextual help that you might have up here I'm back on the classic editor, where they put a little bit of help up there. In the block editor, they basically literally say, yeah, there's a lot here, so we're just going to open up a whole, the WordPress.org page that has all the information that you need. But it is helpful if you need to, kind of go look up how something works. That help is there. Going back to my options. So preferences is a lot like the options, where again, you can turn certain things on and off without going through all, but here's like that same idea that says, maybe I don't want to see excerpts or discussions or things like that on my interface. You can turn those on and off there. And where that's going to impact you is here, when you look at, so on this right bar, this settings toolbar, and that's again, that cog now shows you the settings. The settings are for your post or for the block that you happen to be on. This can get a little confusing when you're like, wait a minute, where is the thing that I'm used to seeing? The block settings, as you go from block to block, that's here under block, but the post settings, which are for the whole document, that's under post, and that's where you get to the things that are probably a little bit more familiar. Like the other interfaces, you can open and close these certain sections. We're kind of used to seeing them in the old, I say used to, for those who are using, those as these meta boxes, these kind of separate boxes that you can open and close. In WordPress now, they open up within this as a panel here. So these here under documents give you control over what to do with your posts. So we'll move right kind of down the line here. Status and visibility, whether this post is public, if it's not public. When you're first making it, you're going to have a draft. So they've moved that. Sometimes I've been looking for a way, why don't I have draft there? Well, because switch to draft is up in the top bar they put, because you're either publishing or you're switching to draft. And then you can publish, again, the publish button when you're writing some content. Let me refresh this. You can make a post private to be seen only by you or by somebody who has password protections. That's one area where you can see, you can set the visibility. Under publish, when you go to publish something, you can publish something in the future. You can set the date that you want something to be seen. So you can set your publish date, and then when you go to publish it, it'll become visible at that time. Post formats, I don't think we need to go into too much. Ray, you let me know if you think differently, but
Peter, one quick thing on the
yeah, please.
On the published date.
Yeah.
And again, this depends on your theme, but kind of where I've messed around to publish date sometimes is, if your theme is one that's displaying posts in newest order, newest to oldest, or vice versa, and let's say you have you have a post and you want to squeeze it in, but you have a couple, you can go in there and you can modify the publish date. So that's a quick way. Whether, again, this works with posts or custom post types is where I've probably done it more.
Yeah.
Any kind of list like that, if you want to, change the order of things, that's usually a really quick way to do it, is try messing around with the date, and you can change order that way.
Yeah, great point. And then, of course, similarly, you have the ability to stick it to the top of the post. Say you have one particular post that you want to always be seen. So on your blog page, you can pick, well, you can pick multiple posts actually, but you can pick typically a post that if that's the one you want to make sure everybody sees who comes to your site, you can stick it to the top of your blog by just clicking this box here. Post formats has to do with specific themes. Primarily, a lot of themes are kind of abandoning the concept. It came out a number of years ago, and I didn't see it embraced too much. But the idea is that it is a way of saying, I'm doing a certain kind of post, and I want it to appear on my page a certain way. I think it was an answer almost to Tumblr or something, if I remember correctly, where you could format, like if it's just a picture and you call it an image. An image post format, it would actually show that post differently than maybe quote the standard. A lot of I don't see people using this nearly as much. I'd be curious to see if people actually are using things. Your author is just that, and it'll default if you're the user entering this, it'll be you. If you have other people and you are an admin or an editor, you can come in here and you can change who the author is. That'll apply. I can change it, and then you have to update it. But that's sometimes necessary, and we'll talk about it a little bit in users. If you had other users and somebody left, say a company, you can delete that user and assign all of their posts to another person, or if there's any reason that you would want to assign posts to a different person, you can do it on a per post basis. The permalink, that is the URL, and this is something that I think is can be used once you know what it's for. So this particular post, and if I want to preview it up here, actually I want to view it. This is always one of the things that gets you crazy, like where did that, I think Judith Ann, at one point you were like, I just want to go to my view post. It's under here under the permalink, where that's the post now, right? So this is the actual full URL. But if we look at this URL, it's got a full, and we'll show in settings why this is so long this way, because this install didn't change, to get rid of all the dates and things like that. But say I only wanted this URL to end in the word, or to just use the word alias post, right? I can change the slug so long it's not used, and now this URL will change that. When you save URL, this little box also pops up kind of in the corner here. Same type of thing where you're now going to your post from outside the admin use, so you'll see what people are seeing. But that's how the URL has changed.
And just a caution on that one too. Yeah. Again, this is you get the warning a lot of times where if you've just published it and you're changing the permalink, that's fine. But if your site's been out there for a while, you're working on someone else's site and you're changing permalinks, be careful, because then you can cause errors. So there are plugins and other things that could do the redirect for you.
Yeah,
And
good point.
otherwise, you have broken links. If someone's going to reference your old page and now it's gone. So
Yep.
that's an error.
Yeah, it's a great point. Okay, so categories and tags are how you organize posts. They don't apply to pages, but on posts, a lot of this will work for both posts and pages, but categories and tags have to do with how you organize your content. Okay. Right now you have sort of this nonsense kind of category, and you can also manage your categories in your menu choice here, categories and tags. You have a list of those. I'm opening this up in another window. And these are the categories. I'm looking at categories first that we have available to us. So, but say I'm kind of jumping out of here. Well, let me do the first thing I want to do is say I'm doing a new post and none of these categories apply. I can add a new category right here and say I want to add the category Tuesday for whatever reason. And then once I do that and I hit add, it's saying, okay, great, we've added a new category to the list. We're going to default to it being checked because you just added it. And maybe you want to undo your, you don't want to uncategorize now, that you just want it there. So now I've changed this post to be under the category of Tuesday. So categories are a way how you can organize and filter your content. You can put category, your posts on different pages based on just show me one category, another on a page. There's a lot of ways to work with categories. Archive pages, you have archive pages, which are specific pages that do that filtering for you. What you can also do is you can also add a category under a parent category, and you can do that here, or you can manage it over under your categories, where you can say, oh, I want this one to be a child of, say, that one. And now when I look at my categories, it's moved. So I have a parent category and a subcategory. So there may be, there's reasons for, organizing those. Maybe you've got enough articles that you're doing, Tad's doing his gardening blog, and he wants to organize by flowers, and then maybe, roses versus orchids or something like that. And, that's a way of managing those. One of the things that's, while I'm here, that's kind of neat, and this is something that I tend to do, is you can edit the categories. Again, as you're editing some of these things, just be aware of how you're using them in other places. I tend to go in here and I get rid of, I change the uncategorized to maybe say miscellaneous. I can remember how to spell miscellaneous. And I might make the slug that way. And when I update that, now if I go to my posts, instead of it being uncategorized, which to me feels like I didn't bother to do something, which may in fact be the case, that uncategorized, that category has now been renamed miscellaneous. Like, I intentionally put it in the miscellaneous potpourri category. So that's a little trick you can look at for there. And then while we're talking about, and you might hear the word taxonomy, tags fits under that too. Taxonomy, how you organize things. Categories are what are called hierarchical, this idea that you could have parent and child. Tags are something that you might use to get into a level of detail for how you would organize and maybe find information. So say we did have, under the gardening, we had flowers, and then we had rows, and maybe you literally would have red as a new tag and white as a tag. And you can turn your tags on and off on how you organize things. This is, again, how do you organize information? So I know that's a very brief way of looking at how we organize in the taxonomy, but we got a lot to cover. So the other thing in this, and I'm going to close, see how you can open and close things here, kind of get them out of your way by just clicking on the title. Featured image is very important, especially if you're using social media or if people are linking to it, because the featured image, not only is it used by the theme, the image, it might say, and depending on how your theme is using that, that featured image, is it the big hero image? Is it under your title? There's a lot of things that different themes use, and we'll look at this particular one. But it's also used in things like social media, where if somebody links to the URL, that image will be, oh, here's the featured image. Here's the image I'm going to use on the Facebook post or the Twitter post. And you can choose from your image library. You can remove it if you decide you don't want it. Normally, if you're coming in, you're first doing it, you have to set featured image, and you can pick an image, that type of. So the featured image ends up being pretty important. If I take a quick peek at that, I should see there's that image now. Is in this theme, it's this big giant image, and that's by selecting the featured image. Excerpt is the small snippet of text that if you are showing on your blog page, and that'll be under settings, we'll get to that, where you could either show the full post or just an excerpt. If you put nothing here, the excerpt will be generated by WordPress itself. It'll be the first X number of characters. I don't remember the exact what the default character. I think you can actually set it, or you can write your own excerpt and post and put that here in this excerpt box. This is a really long excerpt that I would not use. But this gives you the ability that when you're doing your listings and all to just show the excerpt, that little bit of text that you want to say that represents what that content is. So you fill that in the excerpt box. And the last part is discussion. Last part here, allow comments or allow pingbacks and trackbacks. So if you are somebody who wants to generate comments and have a whole discussion, you can do that here by turning that on. I have clients that they're doing posts, but they don't really have any interest in having engaging with customers. And you just have to know that when you allow comments, you're going to get a lot of comment spam, and there's ways of dealing with that. But this is where you turn comments on or off. So if I have comments on at the bottom of my screen, I'm going to get this, leave a comment, post it. If I turn the comments off, and go re-preview that. Oh, I guess I have to save that one. There's some things that you actually have to save. And now that's gone. Although, interestingly enough, oh no, that's the author box. I get confused myself with this new 2021 theme. But the comments are now turned off. By the way, when you're looking, that top black bar, when you're looking at a post, if you click at the top, edit post, now we're back just to the edit screen here. So that's where the allow comments or not allow comments are. And allow pingbacks and trackbacks. I don't know what's the briefest way of saying it. This is when you do a post and it alerts, and say you're using links, and it'll alert what the link that you're using, their website, that you're using their link, so that they might be able to do backlinks and vice versa. The problem is this gets used for spamming a lot, and that you could potentially connect your website to less than reputable other sites. So that's something to be concerned with if you let that happen automatically versus kind of manually handling it. Ray, I'm curious, do you have any feedback on that topic?
I don't. I tend to leave that just the default setting as well too. Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to, like you said, kind of WordPress's older days of blogging, and I'm not sure how useful that is anymore.
Yeah, I turn that off. And in fact, you can do that universally. We'll get to settings. So this there are ways to show that some that universally. Ray, am I missing it? Oh, under the post interface, you also have under some of your options, I got to remember where this is. So I would never do the reducing. If you look at the screen, like up here, when I hit reduce interface, it makes those useful blocks go away. I wouldn't do that. But one thing that some people would like is if they click under appearance, display button labels, instead of the icons, you'll get the words that tell you that this is the modes, your undo, redo, details. It's these buttons, but with words, and the same thing up here. So that's just a preference to your interface choice. You also have under use theme styles. If you use theme styles, it's going to kind of try to take the CSS from your blog and put it in your editor so you can kind of get an idea what it'll look like. If you turn it off, you'll see that it looks very different, because now it's not using any of the styling that you would otherwise want. So depending on how well your theme is being used in the editor, using the theme styles could be a good way to go for you on here. So I want to show that without getting too much into all the editing. We talked about some of this in the block editing, in the block editor. Some of the choices here that have to do with you know, this idea of mode, whether you're editing or selecting. This is a little bit weird that I don't know if anybody's going to really care. It just kind of tells you, as select just puts the box around something, and then you can look at it. But it might help you if you're trying to figure out the best way to get to a block. Well, when you're on a block, all the choices up here will kind of correspond to if you're using the menu at the top versus again, this idea of the preferences and oh, right here, top toolbar. I like to have my toolbar right with each block. So in that fact, you won't get that at the top. So if you say, hey, why is that up there? It's under your preferences using the top toolbar. Probably spent a lot of time on this, Ray. What did I miss? Anything?
Yeah, but this was deep. I think, you know, those two options, pages and posts, and like I said, I don't think you're probably gonna need to spend as much time on pages because a lot of it's duplicative.
It works the same.
Yeah,
you don't have categories.
I'd say something to show maybe on this view, this kind of list view, is the same caveat that we said earlier, which is depending on your theme or more likely your plugin, you may see different things. You may see different columns here.
Oh yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So like an SEO plugin, for example, may expose a column of the metadata on here, so you can easily change it. One other, just probably more of, it goes a little bit beyond this, but you know, one feature that people tend to think, you know, they're kind of surprised that WordPress doesn't supply out of the box is, Peter, if you hover your mouse over like About Us, just to show kind of the actions there isn't a copy, there isn't a duplicate.
Yeah, right.
Which is why everyone, at least you know, it drives you crazy. But one of the first things I install on a clean install is that duplicate page or post plugin. It's free, and it just saves you so much time instead of copying and pasting stuff. So
great point. Yeah, and here's an example of a website that is using it's using a different SEO, so different SEO plugins, Yoast, Seo Press. This is the SEO framework, which is becoming a favorite of mine because it doesn't add a whole lot of stuff I don't want, but it adds this column under my pages that has all of these little things that kind of give me information that, you know, again, I could come up here and it adds this now, and I can turn that off and kind of look like what it looked like before. But that SEO plugin has added this whole column here. And yeah, you can get into all kinds of additional stuff, but that's a good point. The edit, when you're editing a page, this whole thing works very, very similarly. You're not going to have, you know, your categories and tags, as I mentioned, that type of thing, but most everything else is going to work the same.
let's see, sorry.
Anything else? Where are we at that? Because I know that took a while.
We had a couple of questions I answered in the chat. If you want to take a quick look at them as well, make sure if you want to add something to it, it's a quick message.
Yeah, and anybody speak up while we're there. I know that there's a lot there, and I'd be curious if anybody runs into kind of some issues under pages or posts. We kind of didn't cover pages yet we'll get into some of it with some of how it works with menuing and things like that. But
I mean, one of the questions that came up, I think, from a couple of people was around categories, which probably is its own side conversation at some point around how they're used. But just quickly, the question Peter came up was, you know, from an SEO perspective, like how are categories used in SEO? And my answer was more around, yes, they are considered for SEO.
Yeah,
it's really not that much. I will say you can create sitemaps. I mean, that's one thing too. So if you're using a category, then, you know, depending on your SEO tool or whatever, you can create a a sitemap for categories. So that's, you get a little bit of boost from that.
Yeah, you do. The whole, I'll sum up the whole SEO. My point of view on SEO kind of really succinctly is write really good, well-formatted content. That's the main thing. All these other things have some factor, like, oh, how would you have it categorized, things like that. It gives, Google an idea of what something is, but it only really cares about when it reads the page is, are you actually talking about the thing that's in the category?
I would say categories and tags are really more for people. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, they do have some benefit to SEO, but really think about it from your user's perspective or your visitor's perspective. They're coming to your site, and if you have a blog with hundreds of entries and all that, that's who you really want to create the categories for, so people can navigate your site easier.
Exactly. When you're on your category setting, by the way, and yes, you're looking at what's there, it gives you an idea of, this admin page. I showed this before. You can edit the name. You can put a description in for each category, and you can add a bunch of categories here in your category page, just like you can under tags. Or you could do it kind of live when you're doing the post. As this says here, the description is not prominent by default. However, some themes may show it. So there are themes, or you might want to say, I want a page that is going to have a category as a page. I want to use my description as in the top block, and then list the posts in that category below that. That might be a function of a theme, or that one might be a page template that you create. A little bit more advanced than what we're talking about, but that might be a place where you want to use the description and things like that. What you also have in this area is, okay, well, in this category, and I probably should use like red, blue, green, or whatever. It's going to say, oh, I've got 6 posts that are using that category, and if I click on this here, it's going to show me more than 6. Why did it do that? Well, that's correct. That 9 posts when I clicked on the number 9, and but it'll show you if you're like, okay, when I'm talking about Tuesday, well, what's my Tuesday post? And it's this one, because so there's a lot of ways that WordPress gets you to and from information in various ways. So this might be a reason to go in and look at, or say you've got a category that you created and you've got all of these posts and you've got this one lone category. You come to this list and you go, wow, I've got 20 posts, 30 posts, 10 posts, 5 posts under these, and this one little guy's got 1. Can I recategorize it, for example? Can I put it somewhere else? So now I'm not dealing with this huge list of categories. How can I consolidate my categories when you look at things like that? And I would be cognizant of that. I see websites that have 30 categories with 1 post in each. That doesn't really help anybody. So you want to kind of be aware of that. Make sense?
Sounds good.
Good.
I'll grab it back, and
yep.
The other ones, like my other ones, most of them are going to be much smaller.
Yeah,
so I think we have plenty of time for additional questions too. So if folks think of stuff as I'm sharing, if you want to go back to a section that I covered, that Peter covered, we should have plenty of time for that as well. So let me pick up screen sharing 1 second, and I'm going to share this. Can you see my screen okay?
Let's see. I can.
Okay. All right. So Peter covered posts. I'm going to do media, and then I'll do comments together. If you want to do anything else with pages, we can do that as well. So media. So the media library. I mean, there's not a lot in here. I think that isn't self-evident. I think, but there are some quirks to it too. So let me just show you just the media library itself. So, one thing that some people may not be aware of is, you can upload different file types in here. It's not just like JPEGs or image files. I mean, you could put things like PDF files, so your website may not necessarily use PDFs, but, Word documents, et cetera, et cetera. So it really is a file manager, or, videos, for example. And definitely outside of the scope, I think, of this discussion, but be careful in terms of what you put on here, for various reasons, privacy, etc. So don't put your financial statements on a website if if the page is open to the public. Video is another funny one too, that sometimes I've worked with clients where they say, oh, I've got this big video I want to show on my website. Can I just stick it onto, can I upload it to my site? And I always have to answer yes, you can, but don't,
Yeah.
you want to stream things, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So that's just a quick broad caveat of files on here. But, again, you can, if you have a need to put, let's say, a PDF or something else, you can certainly add them to your website. So just from a viewing standpoint, there's not a lot the standard media library viewer gives you. And you can basically change your views from, a grid view to a thumbnail view. So it's pretty basic out of the box. There's a lot of other plugins out there that let you do a lot more in terms of categorizing or changing the display of your files in the media library. I won't go through all of them, but I will show you one that at least I've found useful. And I think we've talked about this one before. And Peter, I think you've said you've used this one as well too. So this is Filebird.
Yeah.
So Filebird, the thing I like about it, and again, for most websites, if you don't have a lot of things to categorize, it's probably, you won't get much out of it. But the neat thing is, like, I've worked with a client where they did have, let's say, a lot of PDFs, where they had a lot of media that they needed to categorize. So what's cool here is you can create folders. You can create a folder for the PDFs and then drag these things into that folder. So where that helps is it doesn't affect the URLs or the location of these files themselves. So the files all stay exactly where they are, but think of it as another way for you to categorize them. So if somebody then wants to go and say, I want to view all the PDFs or whatever I call that folder, they can just click on that and just see those things. So it's, it's not breaking anything behind the scenes, but it's letting you get a different view. I mean, and I know there's a lot of other media library plugins. I don't know, Peter, if you can think of any off the top of your head that are kind of.
Yeah, Happy Files. They were on I got sucked into the lifetime deal from AppSumo for that one. But yeah, that's another one that kind of does a similar.
The other one I'll show, and again, it doesn't have to do with categorizing. Let me turn off these as I'm showing them. I'll turn them off. So that was Filebird, and it's free. Again, free Filebird Lite. I'll just say it's temporary. One that going back to something that really should have been baked into WordPress itself is enable media replace. So if you looked at, let me go back here and show you again, kind of like with pages and posts, just that ability to duplicate something. You would think if I want to remove, let's say I have a new picture of this cute little otter here. The problem is right now, if I delete this and upload a new one, it's going to give me a new URL to that. So I uploaded this picture, in January. So it just happens to be that, yes, my file folder is set up as 2021-01, and that's where the file goes. So let's say in February, I replace this picture with something different. Well, the file URL is going to be different. It's going to be 2021-02 otter, whatever I call this kind of thing. And that's fine. If you're still building the site from scratch, that's okay. You can change, just like we said with permalinks, no big deal, nothing's published. But if you're going back to a site, let's say, and you want to change an image, and let's say the image is used in 50 different pages on the site, you don't want to go back and have all these broken links. So you would think WordPress would give you this ability out of the box to do something like that. Well, it doesn't, unfortunately, but there's always a plugin. That was our famous thing. There's a plugin for that. So the one that I like, again, free one, is Enable Media Replace.
Yep.
It's by the Short Pixel folks who do a lot of other cool plugins. So what this thing lets you do is something very basic, but let's say I want to replace that otter file now. It gives you this option to say replace media. By doing that, I can upload a new file here, but here's the cool thing. I can say, do I want to just replace the file, or do I want to replace it? Do I want to update all the links? Just keep the file as is. Don't change anything. You can mess around with dates. At this point, you can switch dates around, etc. So it gives you a lot more control, what you don't get out of the box by, like I said, by deleting a file and uploading a new file. So let me turn that off though. Go back to quickly turn this off, deactivate. So I wanted to show you that. So Filebird, enable media replace. Some other quick things about just the file interface. I won't show everything in here, but this has gotten better in terms of what you can do with your media, specifically with images. So I think we showed this a little bit in even our last demo or last month's presentation, or the one before it, that now you have the ability to actually edit images in here.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's better than nothing. I still look at this as kind of a quick and dirty thing. If I want to do something silly, like, oh, I don't want him there. I want him on his back. I want him swimming that way. I can do that with it. It's magic. You can do some cropping and stuff, which I don't know. Sure, go ahead and do that. Here, I'll show you this elsewhere, but back to our discussion about SEO. So alternate text. So alt text is information that does have an SEO element to it, although that's not its primary purpose. At some point, we're going to do, Peter's going to do our do justice to our accessibility discussion, and that really is the purpose of alt text, is people using screen readers, etc. To describe the image. But because it's text, a lot of people do use it for SEO purposes. So ideally, you want to balance the two. You want the description there to say what the image is. So anyway, this is where you would set that.
Yeah.
I won't go through all these things. Like I said, you can play around with it yourself and see like how good this is for what kind of editing you want to do. But I just want to point out to people that it is there. So a lot of people think that they have to go and use some kind of image editing software. If you need to do a quick touch up on an image, you can certainly do it inline. Another quick thing to just kind of talk about is when you're adding a file, depending on your hosting, you're going to see a different maximum upload file size. Yeah. So if you're using not the greatest hosting, or for various reasons, you may be limited here. In fact, I've seen some hosts where this is very limited, like, forget about 256, they'll let you do 100 or 64 or something really low. If that's the case, can you update it? Maybe. It depends on if you have access to the PHP settings, and if you're comfortable touching that. If you mess that up, fair warning, you can really break things. So what I highly say, if you're a beginner, contact your hosting company, open up a ticket or whatever, and say, hey, I noticed my upload is only 250 or whatever it is, your limit. Can you change that? And maybe it doesn't matter. If you're uploading things beyond 256 megabytes, maybe think about reducing the file size. But on occasion, you may hit something where you hit a limit and you do legitimately need to upload it. Again, just be aware of that limitation. Let's see, I just got a couple other quick things on this. Back to the library piece as well. Max file sizes, image editing. Oh, alt text. So back to the alt text piece. What was my example I was going to show? So from a search standpoint, just like Peter showed this with pages and posts, you can search by file name. So if I say Barks, there we go, there's Barks a lot. He shows up, but you may not be aware of the fact that even some information that you don't see on here, like that alt text, you can search for that as well. So if I say, oh, I want to see that one that I call the cute kitten. There we go. So the cat shows up because that's inside of the alt text for there. So, could be handy, especially sometimes if you're adding alt text and you're saying, where did I put that? Because you can't see it really visibly. You can't see it kind of clearly here. And this is one I don't think, it doesn't even show up as a screen option. So you may have to do a lot of digging to find that. And then finally on the media library, one that I personally find confusing, and I'm hoping Peter or others can chime in on this, is this whole attach piece, whether something's attached or not. This always throws me because it's counterintuitive. So all these images you're looking at here, they are associated with a post or a page. Again, that's why I put them up here. But because these images, the one that say unattached, because I uploaded them through the media library, and then I used them later on the post or page, here it displays as unattached. Which is easy. This one, the otter, I added it directly on the page. So on that page, I added an image, I uploaded it from my computer, and now magically WordPress says that's attached. It's not that the other ones are orphaned, it's just, it's kind of goofy. So what I could do if I wanted to, and this is where I'm looking to see what's the value of this, is I could go in here and say, oh, meows a lot. I know I added that to my Hello World page. And once I do this, now, I don't even know if I saved it or not, but again, that you can manually attach things. Peter, I don't know if you have a 2 cents on that.
That's a tough one for the same reason. And I'm trying to, it's one of these things I just blocked out. I have a website where I have hundreds of art pieces, and these things have been added multiple times, and I had to go in and I just wanted to clean all of that up. And I started using this attachment, and it just wasn't accurate enough for the very reasons that you're saying.
Yeah, because ideally, where this would seem to make sense is, let's say, like, for example, I'm working on a website for a client, and we went back and forth on multiple images, and they changed their mind dozens of times. So at the end, I do have these images that are uploaded, and I had to go back because it's been a couple months or weeks I've worked on the site. I'm like, I know I'm not using half these images. I have to go through and basically remove them, and I kind of do it manually. Ideally, you'd go in and say something's unattached, and then you could delete it. So anyway, the long story short here is, when you see that unattached, it doesn't mean, take that with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean exactly what you think it would mean intuitively.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look it up. I swear I used a plugin to do.
There's probably a plugin. There's a plugin that really.
Yeah, I'm looking for it now on the site but I can't. I may have used it and then deleted it, but I'll look into that, because it's a thing. And you might want to. Did you mention when you upload a file, how many files are created?
No, because that also, you can certainly chime in here, but a lot of it is also dependent on your theme and what your theme is going to do in terms of the file. So
yeah, I'll show that in settings.
Yeah.
So the themes.
Anything
You've got.
I'm looking at the chat real quick. Anything pop up in the chat in terms of questions?
Can you safely delete unattached media pictures? Well, that's the issue is
maybe
making sure that they aren't part of and that's what we're talking about, like making sure that even though they show unattached, that they may still be used in a post or a page.
Right.
I'll look into that. It doesn't interfere with the speed at which the site loads. So limiting the size of a file. So the only time that I personally need large file sizes for any single file is, oh boy, I've never had to go too high. The large files are PDFs.
PDFs, yeah.
Can be the largest. Video, on the rare occasion that a video was posted from the site, and neither of us recommend doing that. Your WordPress site is not a video streaming platform. Audio files.
And I didn't catch the whole question, but if the question was around, performance of having large files, this is one of those. Normally, the answer is yes. Large files are bad. Large files will break performance, but PDF is kind of an exception. So, in the case of a PDF, like I'm thinking of a nonprofit I help, where they upload their annual reports as PDFs.
Yeah.
Those are pretty big.
Yeah, they can be very big.
Does that slow the site down? No, it doesn't.
No. Yeah, the question specific. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah,
specifically to slowing the site down, not at all.
For that one PDF, it's not showing up as an image anywhere. So when the only time anyone's going to download that big PDF is when they click on the link or the button I put on that says download it. In that case, that one person, they're going to sit there waiting for it, but not everyone else. Everyone else goes to the site. They're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let me jump.
I want to show just real quick the fact that there's a grid layout versus the list layout. Did you show that already?
Yeah, I showed that. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was probably. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I was looking for a bigger grid, Ray.
So tiny. So the other one I'm going to cover just in a second, then I'll hand it over to Peter. Is comments. I think you covered a lot of comments. There really nothing all that exciting to show here. Like you said, you could control that through, I think we'll show also in settings too.
Yeah.
The settings discussion for people who don't go into this one much. There's a whole bunch of things here you can do with comments. We won't talk about that a lot. And then the other piece too is for our blogger friends who are on here, you probably know you get a ton of spam comments and some really weird comments that are like, why are people putting this on my blog? If you haven't already, I mean, I know there's better ones out there, but by default, a lot of people swear by it. By default, kind of the granddaddy is Akismet anti-spam. So turn that on. I haven't used that in quite a while, but from what I hear, it's still probably one of the most popular ones for blocking spam comments. If nothing else, at least make sure that by default you're reviewing and approving comments. They're not just getting posted to your site. So
yeah.
I'm not sure there's much else to say on comments than that. I couldn't think of a lot here.
Yeah, one if you're somebody who has gotten into the whole area of managing comments, you know about managing comments, and yeah, it's getting those emails, getting those spams. Ray, can you go back to media real quick? There was a question. I don't know. And again, forgive me if we've covered stuff, but if you go into a Otter or whatever, where the file URL and you can copy to the clipboard. That copy to clipboard is, by the way, new. If you put that in, that's where you get that raw file. And we had a question about, can you pull the file back down?
Yeah.
This is one way. Or if you did have that PDF file and you needed to put the link, you uploaded it to your media library, but you wanted to put the link in the body of a text, you could go copy that URL and then just paste that into your document.
What this doesn't show you, and this is probably a whole bigger discussion, is so this is just showing this one version of the JPEG of the file uploaded. But as Peter was saying, that depending on the theme could be creating a small, medium, large thumbnail version of it, etc. I don't think those aren't by default exposed, the URLs to those. You have to hunt for those, or again, I'm sure there's a plugin for that too that lets you see all those additional versions of that file that get uploaded.
It's typically it takes the file name, adds a dash, and then the width times height. So it'll be like, we'll see where it says 800 by. It'll literally put that in. So if you put in after Otter 1, and then put put dash 150 by 150.
X 150.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's the generated thumbnail, because the default thumbnail that you have is 150 pixels by 150 pixels. So that has been created by WordPress when the file was uploaded at this reduced file size that is cropped, and it's the 150 by 150. So when you see the word thumbnail, the default is this.
Yeah, and Steve had a question earlier when you were showing like featured image, which is kind of, it's a bit related. So first off, the image you upload, your theme is going to dictate how big those different versions will be of what it does. So by default, it'll create a thumbnail version that could be 150 by 150, but some themes again will create a couple versions of the file. The reason for that is because if you're going to show, let's say, a portfolio page or an archive page, for example, on that page, you may want this Otter looking bigger than 150 by 150, maybe 300 by 300, etc. And then featured image, the same thing too, that your theme is going to dictate which of those images it uses, or if it uses a featured image, and then if so, which of these images it uses. So unfortunately, you have to go to your theme documentation to figure that out. How does the theme work? And depending on your theme, it may be easy to find that information, or unfortunately, it may not be. All right, so let me stop. And I know from a time standpoint, we're at 7:35.
Yeah, we're gonna have to fly through some of this.
Yeah, we'll cover as much as we can. And again, if we run out of time, we can catch these up on the.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this would be great to get people to if they have specific questions where we can spend more or less time on certain things. And I am looking for go grab the share. Where did that go? Close all of these. Oh, there we go. Share screen. So I'm going to share. Okay. What do you see?
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet? Okay, so, oh, there you go. Can you see?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to talk about appearance and plugins, right? So appearance, big area. The first area that we have are themes. We talk about themes a lot. Themes are a package of files that control how your site looks primarily and how it acts and what functionality it can have. Built-in plugins. It can have, and we've spent some time in previous meetups on it. But your themes really can totally change the way WordPress works, and it could totally change the way WordPress looks. So if I have you know, this page here that I was showing before, and without even knowing what it's going to look, and say I go, I've got, you know, the Cadence theme that I've got loaded. I can show you how to load that, and I've activated it. Now if I come to this, it looks completely different, and there's all kinds of functionality that are going to be defined by the theme. So theme is a huge topic, but where your themes are managed is right here. Reactivate when you click on, you can activate it, get the information. Of course, you can click the activate right there. What's nice is you get the live preview button, is something that's been added over the last few years, which shows you what your site would look like with different different themes, or the themes that you have loaded. You can add a new theme by clicking add new. You can upload it if you say you've purchased a theme, or if you're going to the repository and it's looking right here in the repository, and say I wanted to look for you know, Generate Press. You know, I can get a preview of what Generate Press is looking at this, and typically your previews are going to look very, very basic for most, because it's showing you sort of what the blog page looks like. This particular, you know, and as you go through it, this particular theme, while it's showing this wonderful home page, you know, your initial you'll get used to seeing that, oh, it's just showing you the blog and all. But theme hunting is its own huge topic, and should you actually go try to find a theme that does everything you want, or find a theme that allows you to do the things that you want in the most efficient way with the greatest amount of help, and yet have flexibility, which is something that I generally would suggest. But when you're looking at the themes that you have, you know, you're always going to have, even if you've loaded and tried other themes, you'll have your one active. If you don't need a theme, deleting it, getting it out of it, you know, you just this is under themes. I'm going to click on this one and go, now I'm going to get rid of 2020 because I'm not going to use that on this site. And now it's removed that. It's a, you know, as you're maintaining your site, getting rid of the stuff that you don't use is certainly something you want to pay attention to. When you have a theme, one of the main things under the theme is the customizer. And the customizer is how you go and customize your whole site, and it's based on the way that, you know, what that theme allows you to do. And under your customizer, depending on what theme you have, you are going to get a completely different set of choices depending on what theme you have. Right now, we're just using the default 2021, and these are the default choices. So without getting into too great, we'll just kind of talk about what each one of these sections here matter. Some are going to be common to most themes. Others will be completely unique to the theme that you're in. Site identity has to do with your logo, your site title, your tagline. The site title here is what I see up here, and the way the customizer works is that you can edit either, you know, in the section, or for certain ones, if you see that blue area, that's going to bring you right to that section. If I'm clicking here and now it's highlighting, oh, that's where I can now edit, and I'm getting a live edit here of the text here. This is what shows under your Where this is important for the site title is that also is an SEO thing, that this is your whole identifying your site. You also have the logo, and let's just say I wanted this logo. I can upload into the media library or select if I've already put it there, kind of what we were just talking about with the media library. You can select what part of that image that you want. I could have skipped cropping. And now that becomes the logo of my site, and depending on how I, what I set in the customizer, display site title and tagline, or not, if I just want the logo, this is all showing me how these different how these different areas are being used. One of the things that's kind of interesting, people ask a lot about, is the site icon. And the site icon is the in the WordPress, the default is that WordPress logo, but when you go to certain sites, so I'll do one really quickly where I'm going to try to see where I have that. So you're looking for a ping file that's typically a ping file that's 512 by 512, a square image. And there are, it's called a favicon. There are favicon makers, but it's that simple image that if I select that, now my icon has changed to that. I don't know if you can see on the screen, but this is now my site icon. It gives you a little kind of image here, but this is where you do this. This is all under your site identity. So a lot of times people kind of wonder, well, how can I change that? This is where you change it under your customizer, under site identity, where you change where you add your logo, if you want to, your site title, your tagline, and that little icon that appears in the tabs in browsers, or wherever that may be used. If you have an app on your phone and you put somebody's website on the phone, that's where that's all going to be. So now if I go back here to my other choices under the 2021 theme, under they have kind of a color choice or a dark mode. I'm not even sure what the dark mode did here, but these are all specific to the theme. Say I like that theme better, or this image better, I could do that. I do like that better. And that will apply only if I publish it. And now if I look at this site from here, I'm now looking at that color because I've changed it here in my customizer. Background image, in this case, it's for the whole site. I don't think I would ever use that for anything, but that's, again, you wouldn't see that in a lot of themes. Your menu choices is kind of interesting, because this is where you end up setting your menus. And I don't know if I have one up here, but you can control, normally you go under your menu section, but you can control all of that right here in the customizer, where you can add your menu, put it in your primary area, and add your pages. You could, move these around, delete them, just like you can do under your main section where you go into appearance menus, which I'll show, but it's actually built into the customizer. And then when you're working on a menu, telling it where you want it to show up. In this case, the primary menu is here. That's this theme. When you activate a primary menu, is saying, okay, if I have a menu, take my title, if I'm showing it, move it to the left and put the menu to the right. So you have different themes will say, oh, put it below, or you have a choice. Do you want it to the right, left, or below? That all is a function, or those are all capabilities that would be built into the theme. So it can get very different than what you see here, but these are some of the things that you might see in a customizer. If I come back here and I refresh this, I now have my menu that I've put is now based on the fact that I created this menu in the customizer, or I could do it in a separate area. I'll show you very, very quickly now that we're doing it here. I said show it in the primary area, which in the theme is to the right of where I'm putting my site title. Widgets is an interesting thing, because widgets are, some people are saying they're being phased out to some degree. In the 2021 theme, your widgets appear here at the bottom. They appear at the bottom of the screen. This footer, which is sort of kind of gets lost in everything, but those are the widgets that are being shown. And you can, reorder these or remove them. If I publish that, I relook here, I now have, as I put here, pages, archives, categories. I now have pages, archives, categories, because that's a widget area for the footer that the 2021 theme has. If I show you a different theme, I may have 5 widget areas, or I may have a left sidebar, a right sidebar, and a footer. The widgets and the widget areas are again defined by the theme. So you have to look at your theme and kind of get a general idea, and then you would need to do a little experimenting on your own. So homepage settings, this is where, and I'll show you this under settings too, where you decide whether you're going to show a list of posts, which is the default, right? So your latest post, this is the homepage, or if you want to pick a static page, a specific page. And in this case, I created, well, it's not here. I'll have to look. I thought I created a page for, oh, I know, because I put it in the menu. But it's showing me that I can change from, instead of latest post, and it's going to give me this live action. And here's my latest post. Maybe I created a page, and it's typically how people like to do it. They want to create a page, put a hero image, put their information, that type of thing. You would select under here, under homepage settings, and then you would pick that page. I'm going to pick something called gallery just because I know what it's going to show. And that now becomes my homepage. If I publish that, I come back to the front end of the site. And if I typically go to the home, now this is my new homepage. Instead of being that list of posts, it is this single page that's been created. And of course, this is where you go in and you create and edit a nice page under your, under pages. You add a page that you edit all for your homepage. Or if you're a blog and you just want to have your blog posts, that's fine too. I mean, that's if you're just doing blogging. And now when I refresh this, I'm seeing the list of blog posts because that's what my homepage settings are set to, my latest posts. Excerpt settings is just a matter of am I showing the summary or the full text when I'm showing a post. So this is full text. This is summary. And if I had written a custom excerpt, the excerpt would be here versus just pulling the first, say, paragraph or so. And we won't get into this, but additional CSS, that's when you have to get into specific coding. You can add this into your customizer. So the 2021 customizer is actually pretty slim. Other customizers will get into very, very involved levels of detail. So if I close this, I come back to, now I'm kind of back to the regular thing. Also under, so
one thing I throw in real quick on
please.
this around customizers. I think where people get confused, even I get confused sometimes too, is that there's some settings in the customizer that are also duplicative of what you'll see in other parts. So like in settings, we probably won't have time to go into that in detail. You'll see things in there like the site tag and all that that's in settings. You can change it, but it's also in the customizer. But then there's times where the only way you could find a setting like Favicon, I think sometimes some themes, the only place you could ever change it is in the customizer. So
that's right.
It's one of those things where I don't have great advice for people, but your theme may have its own theme settings, menu item. So be persistent. If you don't find it in the WordPress settings, you don't find it in a theme, you don't have a theme setting, go look in the customizer. Because somebody had a question, Peter, when while you're doing a demonstration around font sizes. So the 2021 theme, I don't think it exposes, like, if you want to say your H1 or H2 font sizes, some themes do put that in the customizer. This one, I don't think does. It doesn't let you change that.
Yeah, you're right. Nope.
Like I've seen ones like, I think Divi has like typography and some other themes you say something like that, but this something seems so basic that they don't let you change it. So
yeah, if I look at this just very quickly, of course, if you're looking at your site, that's the customizer is usually right there in that top admin bar if you're logged in. So this is Generate Press. This is all the, the font settings, and that's just for the basic, and then you can get into even more granular level. So yeah, but that's a function of the theme. Setting colors for all the background containers and things like that, whereas 2021 just had that one color for, kind of the whole site, and so on. So each theme is going to have more or less set of functions. My advice on that whole thing, and this is kind of, sounds like grim. First of all, pick a good theme, but pay attention to, it's just something. If you want something that's just going to do everything for you, you can find that. If you want to work with something that's going to allow you some flexibility and growth and all, and then really learn it. We have our short list of the ones that we like, and then when you really learn it, some of this stuff becomes second nature versus, oh my God, or, oh, I saw that he did this one thing and that one thing, now I have to go get that. Well, maybe, but the challenge there is getting to know what you have and what you need. And then maybe you do have to change. One thing you don't want to do is keep changing, because you're like, oh, well, I see this over I like, and it's only in that theme. Well, maybe it's in a block, or maybe, a plugin, or maybe it's already built in the theme and you just haven't found it yet. So, there's a lot of options there. Any other questions? Well, because the widgets, this is interesting. Under the widgets, that area that I was showing you where setting the footer, the old way, it's still here, right? Click widgets, and then you can, pick that move, but it even has the manage and the live preview, and it goes right to the customizer.
yeah, I'd say these other ones, I think we covered before. We did a lot of stuff with themes, so
yeah, I think so too.
Plugins, I'm not sure if there's.
Yeah, plugins,
One quick question that came up, Peter, while you were doing it was around plugins. It's the infamous question of how many is too many, and I said it's that sound of one hand clapping. It's like,
yeah,
no, there's no answer to that.
There's no answer to that. There really isn't. Ray, you have an answer, and I'll give mine.
No, I said there is no answer.
Yeah.
My thing was, don't have duplicative ones. Like I've seen sites where they had 3 sliders like that.
Oh yeah.
Quick answer: pick one. don't have 3 of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's a matter of picking the right number of really good quality, efficient plugins. If you can find plugins that do what you need and don't necessarily take over everything or give you certain options, so that you can make, because there's the whole concern about site speed and all of that functionality. If you're looking at like here, right? So I'm looking at my list of plugins, and I've got 2 that are not blue, if you can see that depending on your screen, but my active ones versus, if you're sitting there and you have 15 inactive plugins, get rid of them. If you're looking at them, you go, why do I have 3 SEO plugins? You definitely don't want to have 3 SEO plugins active.
Or caching, you have 4 caching plugins.
Yeah, you want 1 caching, if even that, depending on your host. There are a lot of plugins that only do things on the back end. So when somebody says, oh, you've got a lot of plugins, your site's going to be slow, that is incorrect. I mean, that is not a blanket statement. That is, if you have a lot of plugins that are unnecessarily loading a lot of code on the front end every time somebody loads a page, now you've got an issue. We've talked about sliders. Sliders are going maybe not quite the way of the dodo, but staying away from. But there are ones, like the most popular slider out there called Revolution Slider is a system hog. It's got so much bloat to it, but it's the most popular one out there. Do you need it? That type of.
The other, probably people don't run into this as much as maybe I do or Peter does, who works on other sites, but also beware of the one-time install plugin. Like, let's say I'm debugging a site or something, and I'm installing a plugin to change text. Once I'm done with that, the plugin has served its purpose. It's done the one job. Get rid of it. Yeah, I don't need to keep that thing on there anymore. So I've seen people, they put a plugin on, I'm like, are you still doing that? They're like, no, but I did it once. Well, you're not doing it anymore. So feel free to get rid of it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, on this list of plugins for the base install, user switching was something I was going to show when we talk about users, or actually show lists that Ray, when you logged out and logged in, user switching is a plugin that allows you to do that kind of automatically. Faker Press is a plugin that I use to just load all of that fake data. You give it a, you know, it's the place where you go in, and I just turn that off. And as I'm turning these things off, it's changing my menu choices here. Breeze is something that came with this install with this host. It's a caching, as is bot protection. They came with, actually I loaded Cloudways, and we'll have a sidebar in Cloudways, by the way, Ray. I don't know if you've used it. I set up a website in about 10 minutes. It was amazing. But, you know, and the plugins are going to affect the interfaces and the capabilities and things like that.
Hey, Peter, maybe for the sake of time,
please.
We're kind of running to the top of the hour here. Just like, I won't cover the users or tools because there really isn't a lot to those. Just quick rules of thumb around these is probably more you know, advice as opposed to going into them. For users, first off, make sure that the only users on your site are people who still need to be on your site. That's kind of another good rule of thumb. People have old users or somebody that gave access to their site once and they're not doing whatever they're doing anymore. Get rid of them. You know, that's a security risk. The other thing too is even when you add somebody, make sure you give them the right role. You can look that up in the help thing, I'm sure, underneath here. So if someone is just posting, let's say, blog posts, don't make them an admin, you know, or et cetera. So that's the thing I'd say about around users. Peter already covered the piece too of when you delete a user, now WordPress is actually a lot better. I'm not sure when they started doing this, but once you delete somebody, you can attribute all of their content to somebody else, so it doesn't get lost or it's not orphaned or anything. Yep. So that's a great addition. Just a final real kind of quick thing of tools. There's not a lot to cover there under tools. Import, export were the only things I was going to show. If people want, we can pick that up next time that we meet. I can cover those. And finally, one thing about tools too is, you know, when somebody creates a plugin, it's really up to the plugin developer to figure out where they're going to put their functionality. Nobody's consistent, believe it or not.
Great point.
Some plugins, they'll put it on the direct menu there. So you'll see like Yoast or something will have its own little icon there. Some plugins, though, will stick it under tools. So just, you know, really simple thing. But if you install a plugin and you're like, where the heck are the settings?
Yeah.
If you don't see an icon for it, look under tools. That's usually where people put things. So.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Any other kind of, I know we ran out of a little bit, which we thought we were going to, I mean, there's a lot to cover under here. If folks like this, you know, give us some feedback in the Facebook group afterwards. If there's like, boy, I came here just so I can see the settings. You missed the settings.
Yeah, let me show you. I will show you something really lightning fast for the settings. Okay, so over here, see this long URL under settings, under permalinks. This default, it's using a custom structure because of this host puts all of, that's why it's a year, month, index PHP. That's what you see. Say I wanted just the file, the post name. If I click that, hit save changes, come here. If I reload this, oh, it kept the date, didn't it? Make a liar out of me.
You're on the same site.
Oh, you know what I might be, because I might have to do this. See, so now I've loaded it, and now the URL is just the page name, because under that permalink setting. So under general, you're going to want to change your time zone, your site title and tagline that we already saw. Your URL is usually loaded already. Writing, I don't think reading, you do want to,
which is that same setting you showed before about your home.
These are all in the customizer, right? Discussion, that gets into whether you want it to, basically I'm like, either people can leave a comment or they can't.
Media is the one.
This is where the thumbnails are generated under media, the settings and the size. So that was your 150 by 150 show. These are the defaults. You can change these. and other themes and stuff might add even other choices, and there are even plugins that give you different permalinks I just showed. Privacy is a whole other topic that I think we should get into at some point. Breeze there's an example of a setting that's put in by a plugin. That was a lightning round on that one because we hit 8. So
that was our whirlwind tour. Yeah, I know there's a lot here, and again, it was the purpose of this was to try to touch on the most common things that you'll see. Again, we're recording this. If you missed something, you're like, oh, you went through too quick. Feel free to rewatch the recording. Probably the best thing too is, like I said, we're very active on our Facebook group. So if there's something you go back to later, because that's the thing to play around with this. You go back later and you're like, what is this setting? Most likely, if you didn't see us cover it, this goes back to most likely something your theme or a plugin has added. Right. That's why you don't see it here. But even that, if it's a popular theme or plugin, feel free to ask us about it on the Facebook group. It's probably something that we're familiar with, or we can figure it out. Any other parting thoughts, Peter?
Have a great night.
Yeah. All right, everyone.
I know I ramble a little bit too long on the post, but that's where you spend so much time.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I knew that's the biggie. Yeah. There's a lot of, and that's a problem too with some of these settings. You try to skim the surface, but then it's the settings and the settings and the settings, and you go down the rabbit hole. But you covered it very well.
All right, Ray, I'll tell you how that Dev Kinsta thing goes too.
All right, let me know. Yeah, someone else had a question about that, doing a local install. We probably want to cover that again at some point too. A demo of that, because we did that in person. Believe it or not, that was all the way back in 2018.
Oh my gosh.
18, I think.
Yeah, that's a great place to start.
2019. Yeah.
Yeah, even setting up hosting for the first place. Like I said, I used Cloudways just yesterday, and I was like, okay, I'm done already, and but you have to get used to not having a cPanel and all that kind of stuff. But you don't need it the way they set it up. So anyway.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We will hope to see you again next month. And I'll send out all the information about the links to the recordings afterwards, just like usual. And if you have any questions, always reach out to Peter or myself.
Great.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.